Good afternoon, and welcome to the Calix webinar, How to Increase ARPU and Hone Your Competitive Edge by Ditching Fast Speeds at Low Prices. I'm Susan Friedman from Calix. Before we get started, here's a few tips on using the Zoom console and how you can engage with us during the webinar. At the bottom of your screen, there's a toolbar. Click on the Q&A button to ask our panelists questions. Use the chat button for technical issues or if you would like to share your thoughts and reactions to the conversation. Under the Resources button, you will find speaker bios and links to additional information. During the webinar, we will have a few poll questions. Thank you in advance for your participation in these polls, for they really help us shape the conversation. Today's session is being recorded. The replay link will be sent to all registrants. And with that, I'll hand it over to Susan Higgins, who will introduce you to our speakers. Susan, let's get started.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to have you with us for this educational webinar. Our goal is for you to leave this session with practical, actionable ideas that you and your marketing team can put to work immediately. We hope you'll start seeing positive results, just like many of our customers instantly. And don't forget, this is just the first part of a two-part series. We'd love to see you again for our next session on December 3rd. And now I'm delighted to introduce our two wonderful speakers. First, Christina Carretta is a Senior Success Engagement Manager who specializes in engagement cloud strategy and adoption. With over 10 years of experience in broadband marketing and go-to-market strategy, Christina partners with marketers to help them optimize and execute their marketing plans. She's also served as a marketing director, leading teams, running campaigns, and developing strategies for member engagement and lead generation. And also we have Gabe Peterson. Gabe is the Global Director of Field Strategy at Calix, where he works directly with broadband service providers to drive data-driven marketing success. With 25 years in the telecommunications industry and 20 of those at Calix, Gabe brings a wealth of experience to this conversation. He also co-hosts the Buffering podcast, which is all about helping broadband service providers move their businesses forward through very thoughtful conversations. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Christina and Gabe. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Susan. Appreciate it. I feel like I might actually lose the second part of that of my buffering co-host, because Christina actually co-hosted with Zach this week in a fun little episode that they did together. So if anybody wants to go find out what Wicked, the movie, has to do with broadband service providers, definitely go check that out. She did a fantastic job hosting that with Zach. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate it. We will, as Susan said, we really want to have you all take away some very actionable things from the conversation today that you can take and immediately go back and start using in the business. Christina and I have partnered around some AI prompts that we're going to share. We'll drop those into some of the resources that we'll share as we go through the webinar today. But we really want, again, folks to be able to go back and put into action some of the activities that we're going to talk through today. So just from an agenda perspective, we want to talk just a bit about the industry and opportunity that exists and some of the updates that are happening from an industry perspective. There's some very aggressive tactics, I guess I'll use for lack of a better term, that we're starting to see from some of the large providers, also starting to see some aggressive tactics from folks like Starlink. We'll talk through some of those as well. And then jump into some of the pitfalls that we see with speed-based messaging and how we really are encouraging our customers to be focused more on a value-based approach. And Christina is going to dig into some of that detail. We'll talk through some real-world examples. You can go check out these websites on your own. We'll talk through some of the successes that our customers have seen as they've started to shift to this strategy, and then wrap that up with just driving change and some of the specific next steps. So as we kind of start the conversation here, I find this slide to always be really beneficial around thinking where you're at on this evolutionary journey. And we see a lot of challenge with our customers that are in that bottom section. The book I always refer to when I share this slide is Red Ocean, Blue Ocean Strategy. And it's a famous business book that talks about the fact that at the bottom of this section of the slide, you've got this red ocean where It's short-term vulnerability. It's a highly competitive landscape. It's blood in the water. That's why you call it a red ocean strategy. It's sharks in the water. It's your competitors being very aggressive and trying to, frankly, tear you apart. Whereas as you start to move to more of a value-based approach, and you see some of the benefits that you see there on the left-hand side of the chart, you're offering different types of services to customers, you're sailing into a blue ocean strategy where your competitors can't or won't offer the types of services and solutions that you all are delivering to your customers. So I think it's important here to have an honest conversation about where you stand in the current landscape. Are you in that, hey, we're just a broadband provider, we're just providing managed Wi-Fi, or are you really focused on how that end-to-end subscriber experience and thinking about how your customers are actually using the broadband service that you're delivering to them? We mentioned competition. Competition is, again, on the rise. It's coming from everywhere. And just to talk through a couple of really specific examples, this is something that I saw recently. A colleague sent to me. Charter or Spectrum, which we know is a big competitor for many of our customers who are operating in rural areas of the country, is now offering free internet forever. And yes, you heard that correctly. It's kind of an insane offer, but you can see on the left-hand side of the screen what they're doing is they're trying to bundle in with their Spectrum mobile service free internet. And again, that's free internet forever. You can see on the right-hand side, if you want to upgrade to a 500 meg or a 1 gig service tier, there's a slightly additional charge for that. But I mean, even at $10 or $20 a month, it's still in a very, very aggressive price point. So this is the type of competitive landscape that we're seeing in some markets, which is why it's so important to change the game and start talking about your services in a slightly different way. And we'll talk about that as we go through the presentation. The other one I mentioned at the top was Starlink, and this is another area where we're starting to see this certainly more in rural markets, where they're getting to be much more aggressive from a pricing perspective. I've highlighted the top section of the slide here somewhat recently, just I think within the last couple of weeks is where I've seen this pop up. They're now offering a 100 meg residential service for only $40 a month. And I think, Starlink can, I'm not going to get into into a lot of the details about Starlink, but point being, we are seeing this as a competitive threat to many of the customers that we work with who are serving rural parts of the country. And now they're starting to get even more aggressive from a pricing perspective in how they're rolling out these services. When it initially rolled out, it was fairly high priced. You had to buy, a bunch of equipment. They're starting to even remove some of those equipment fees and also starting to offer lower speeds, but also lower priced packages to try and meet specific parts of the prospect base that they're trying to sell to. So this is something that I haven't seen broadly available across the entire country, but it is something that we're starting to see pop up in certain areas, and something that definitely to keep an eye on as you move forward. We also thought it would be fun to maybe take a little bit of a step away from our industry. And I'll have Susan kick off a poll here, but I was recently talking to someone outside of the industry, and we were talking about some of the challenges that we see in the broadband service provider space, really leaning into speeds and feeds, the technology that is being used to deliver those speeds to the customer, and really leaning into kind of, again, those technical aspects of the service. And he mentioned that regional banking has had this same challenge for a long time. And so I asked him for an example of a regional bank that was not doing a good job of differentiating the services that they were selling to their customers. And he sent me this webpage, which I thought was a really good example of, frankly, what we see in the broadband service provider space a lot, where we're just focused on, in this case, annual percentage yield. Whereas, we in the broadband space, we would be focused on speed. Here, we're talking about, minimums to earn and monthly fees. There, we would be talking about how much does a service cost. We even have the view disclosures, which to me was very similar to the broadband nutrition labels, quote unquote, that are now required to be posted on websites as well. So I thought there were so many similarities here, and I like the idea of kind of taking us out of the broadband space, because the folks, all of us who are sitting on this webinar, we work in this space. We understand the technology. We're not the average consumer, But let's go to a place where maybe we are more of the average consumer. Susan, I don't know if you kicked that off. I didn't see the poll. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I would be curious to just see what what would people choose based on these four options. And just drop your answer into the into the poll question there. We'll give it just a moment to get some results. But I would just be curious, based on the information that you see here, which option would you choose? I don't want to vote because I feel like I'm gonna sully the results. But Susan, do we have results that we can share? I love this so much. What a perfect response. So we've got even distribution across every single option there. That's perfect. Because again, there's no different, it's oh my gosh, I can't believe how well that worked out. This is like the best thing that's happened to me today. So, I mean, what a perfect example here, right? Where we don't know what to choose. Maybe you choose the 5% because it's the highest annual yield, but what are the fees? Is there, again, are there, it says there's only $5 minimum to open, but again, point being, when we take a step back from our industry and look at another industry and the challenges that they have in explaining the services to their customers, I think it's a great corollary for what we see in the broadband service provider space and why we encourage folks to move away from this traditional speed and price-based methodology, and in this case, minimums and annual percentage yield. So thank you for participating in that. I appreciate that. And I'm just tickled how that worked out. So I'll hand it over to Christina here to start talking a little bit more about what we're seeing with our providers and this disruption that's happening in the space.
Amazing results, cracking me up. Okay, so moving it back over to our space in the industry, what is the shift and what is the big disruptor here? So we've got speed, which is the traditional, methodology since the invention of our industry, right? Here's the speed, here's the price and the technology. Where we're now seeing the disruption is moving towards an experience provider and what that means. So I believe we might have another poll question, Susan, on what a value-based offer, what is it to you? So have you heard the term, but you're not sure yet? Understand the concept, but having trouble implementing changes internally, or my company is 100% on board with the concept. So we'll be interested to see what a value-based offer means to you today. We'll see what kind of results we get.
I'm hoping third again. That was just too
Mm-hmm.
perfect for the other one.
Yep. If we'd be so lucky.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, no way. Okay. Oh, gotta go buy a lotto ticket or something.
Seriously. Okay, amazing.
Okay, so split across the board, a third all the way. Awesome. So let's actually dive into value-based offers. So defining a value-based offer or a VBO is a shorthanded term. It is a customer-centric broadband package designed around outcomes and relevance. So this is the disruptor here of moving not just to speed or price. So a VBO will differentiate your go-to-market strategy against your competitors to overall drive the impact on the business. So key categories here, high take rates, increase ARPU, lower churn, and improve customer net promoter score, NPS results. So really good impact that we're trying to achieve with the end goal by making that disrupting shift to a value-based offer. So let's step away again from outside of our industry. When thinking about value-based offers and other avenues, I've got a couple examples here from different segments. So Amazon, top one on the right, if you think about it, there are different ways to engage with Amazon, right? You can purchase and shop without a membership, or you can join as a Prime member and have this sort of elevated experience. Yes, there are versions of price point differences if you want ads with your Amazon Prime Video viewing or not, but they really are starting to own in more on what the Amazon Prime member experience is. So elevating it beyond just free shipping and delivery, but now there are a whole slew of perks that you get. Lots of savings from gas to charging your electric cars, discounts on groceries, which I think their partnership with Whole Foods. Gabe mentioned our Wicked podcast today. So I think I even saw as a Prime member personally, you had access to exclusive early viewing at select theaters for Wicked. So I really see them own in on adding additional benefits to their members, and also just trends in the population in general, what the most like hot ticket or most sought out item might be. So in that case, Wicked is kind of the thing to talk about. If we shift over to fitness and exercise, we do have Peloton. So today, of course, they've expanded beyond bikes with treadmills and all sorts of different offerings. But if we bring it back to their core root offering of bikes, they've got two options. So they've got cross training bike and then the cross training bike plus. You can see the descriptions are a little more value, what's in it for me and how does it align with your lifestyle, right? So essential for a well-rounded routine or a one-off bike. Or if you get the plus, you will have advanced cardio and strength training that's tailored to you. So along with Peloton with your membership, you've got a whole community that you can compete against and get points and chat with and encourage each other for different groups for motivation, and then different health outcomes. So it's the overall experience beyond the bike, making an investment in your overall health. So why value-based offers? We've got a couple different points here. Overall, it's aligning with the customer outcome. So meeting them where they are in their lives and what pain points or needs you're trying to solve, to enhance what they're doing every day. Differentiating your brand. So Gabe talked a lot about how Spectrum are making different offerings of Internet for Life. Promos like that are very expensive, and we all don't have a unlimited umpteenth budget for marketing to be able to compete at that type of level or offer. So really bringing your value and that experience of how you enhance the subscribers in your market is what's going to set you apart beyond just providing internet only. With moving to value-based offers and selling off of experience and positioning, we've also seen impact on increasing customer loyalty. So seeing benefits like peace of mind or an easy to use app with Command IQ or cyber safe browsing, right? That can appeal to a whole variety of different personas from, an elderly household that just needs to do simple tasks or a very connected household that has all of the latest, greatest new technology and smart home devices. So there are different ways that you can provide the same value, but we're just positioning it and messaging it in a different way. This way also drives higher margins. So people psychologically want the best, greatest thing. So they're more likely to land towards the middle of your offerings or on the higher end. So that's going to increase margins with ARPU. It's also going to increase upsell, cross-sell with other managed services. If you're including something like Command IQ and Protect IQ and Experience IQ or Bark, that will help drive the adoption of those services. And then matching market trends, right? So we just talked about broadband, but then other industries such as fitness and healthcare and how they're also shifting to this model. And what this is doing is creating the expectation from a customer that they're wanting that personalization tied to their purchase. So jumping back to us in telecom, after the price point, we've seen kind of a survey over the past couple of years, speed is no longer a differentiator. So an example here from 2022 through 2024, if you just look at the 1 gig tier, you can see the increase in that higher take rate. We're already at 22%. And if you look at it from the bottom half, 78% of your market today don't have a gig. right? So we're not having that high value ARPU and drive. So there is so much opportunity to have that differentiator in the market with how you're positioning your offers.
And Christina, to go back to something you mentioned earlier around kind of service tier distribution, and this kind
Mm-hmm.
of tells that story too. We in business, you talk about a normal distribution. Generally, if you have different services that you're selling in most businesses, the most popular is going to be the middle, as Christina mentioned. That's generally not true in our industry. Typically, what you're seeing is that the most popular tier is the lowest end service. And I would
Mm-hmm.
argue because we're not doing a good job as an industry helping customers understand why it would be beneficial to move up to one of the other service tiers. And this service tier distribution sort of shows that, right? Even in
Mm-hmm.
2024, where we started to see more of a shift to the 1 gig plus service tier, if you just look at the bottom two, the 49% and the 12%, that's a good portion of subscribers that are just coming in on effectively that entry level service tier. So I kind of feel like we're in the one of the very few industries that doesn't have that normal distribution that you would generally see if you're offering three
Mm-hmm.
services. And again, in my view, it just comes back to how the product is marketed and how it's sold. I'll hand it back to you, Christina.
Yeah, thanks. So, moving to this experience, these are all use cases of how choosing you as a provider can help impact their everyday life. So, do they see themselves as a small business owner? With the managed services that you're including in your internet packages, are you helping them be able to protect their kids or their grandma? Help kids be able to do their homework online or become the pro gamer that they're trying to be, the availability to work from home or expand outdoor with that connection? Are they hosting football watch parties outside or having a pool party or finally able to build that she shed that she's always wanted? And now we're seeing that expand even to communities through things like Smart Town. So bringing Wi-Fi to the football Friday night games in the community. And the thing I like, sorry, Gabe. The thing that I do like about this is there is some psychology with putting pictures behind these use cases, right? I think the stat that I've heard before is you've got a prospect's attention for 5 seconds when they're on your website for them to decide where they want to go. So putting an identifying image with these use cases helps communicate the value in that way.
It's such a great point. And I will also say this is where moving away from stock images, moving to something that really
Yeah.
resonates with the community is super important. I think
Yeah.
I've seen a million of these websites where, we go to a website of a rural provider, and we look at the imagery and I go, nobody who lives in the community looks like these people. It's just not aligned with the overall vibe of the community that's being served.
Yep.
So that part becomes super important too. And Christina, I know you've seen this too with if again, going back to the three-tier example, if we've got an entry level service tier that is sort of our basic level of connectivity, putting a picture of somebody who's in a little bit of an older demographic can be a great way to drive people into the higher end service tiers.
Yep.
Because if you're the young family or you're the young person in that community, you don't necessarily want to be the quote unquote old person service tier, right?
Yep.
So I've seen that work really effectively. I think you've seen that work really well in conversations that you've had with customers as well.
Yep. And the number of people in each picture too goes up as
Mm.
the tier increases.
Yep, that's another great one, right? Yeah, if you're selling a family plan, well, let's make sure it's a picture of a family, but also let's make sure that it's a picture of a family that actually looks like somebody who might be living in your community and not a bunch of fancy models.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Okay. Anything else you wanted to add on this one, Christina, before we jump to the next slide? Okay, perfect. Okay. So this is something Christina and I do quite frequently for kind of our regular jobs. And we felt like it was good for us to just spend a moment here thinking about going through and doing a bit of an audit of how you're presenting the services that you're selling to your customers. And the primary way that they're seeing this is on your website. When they come to your website, Are they seeing, a clear definition of what these offers are, of the solutions that you're selling to them? So just a handful of questions that we would ask you to think about as you go away and again, kind of take this action back into your day to day. How many service tiers do you offer? We've mentioned 3 a couple of times on this call. Um, we see many situations where people are offering 5, 6, 7, sometimes even more service tiers. That is really difficult for a customer to differentiate between 25 meg versus 50 meg versus 60 meg versus 100 meg when we have all of these options. So if you are selling 6 or 7 service tiers, I'm just going to be blunt and say that's way too many. You need to think about what can happen from a consolidation perspective to make that choice architecture and the decision easier for your customer when they're coming to the website and making a decision. The other part that this allows you to do is clearly explain the benefits of buying one service versus another, and also gets back to what Christina was talking about around the value-based offers. If I've got 3 really clear offers for different personas that live in the communities that I serve, then it makes it really obvious which service is for each one of these groups. And I would, Christina, I'd love you to top this up here as well, but one of the concerns I always have is people trying to create a service tier for everybody.
Yep.
That's not necessarily something that we need to do. Christina, I don't know if there's anything else you'd add to that, but I think that's definitely a
Yeah.
challenge we see.
Yeah, I think of your tiers as almost like a basket, right? And in the basket, you've got different messaging that you can include, right? So if you had a tier for a connected home, you could definitely do a campaign targeting families. You could do a campaign targeting work from homers. So there are a lot of different opportunities to tailor that experience to different types of people in your market.
And to that point, there's going to be crossover.
Yep.
I have kids, so I'm concerned about protecting them from the terrifying world that is the internet. I also work from home, so I want to make sure that I have a rock solid work from home experience. So there is going to be some crossover there,
Mhm.
which eliminates the need to create 10 different value-based offers to meet every single persona that you would be talking to. So I think that's something we always encourage people to do is, again, let's not boil the ocean. Let's not find every single group. Let's just think about the 2 or 3 really, that are going to cover the vast majority. And then from a website design perspective, I should say, how many scrolls does it take to find your offers? If
Mhm.
people are exceedingly lazy, and if it's 1 or 2 scrolls to actually get to the offer, whether that's swipes on their phone or scrolling if they're on a laptop or whatever, that's probably too many. We need to think about moving those offers higher up on the page so that it's really clear what services you're selling. That generally 50% of people will not even scroll once to get below the quote unquote average fold. So if you have services that are listed below that average fold, people are probably not even seeing them. And there are tools. Microsoft Clarity is a great one. It's a free tool that you can get turned up on your website to understand what that looks like from a scroll depth perspective and things like that. But really encourage you to think about how do we get content higher up on the page to make sure that the majority of people are seeing it. And then from a call to action, call to outcome perspective, when we're asking people to take action on the website, it can't just be a learn more generic button. I think one of the things that we see for our customers that have been really successful with this is thinking about what that button actually says and making sure that it aligns to the value-based offer that they're delivering. If it's a I've seen situations where we have a customer who's selling a work from home package, and the call to action is, instead of learn more, it's love your home office. Or if it's a gaming package, game all day. Like, being really thoughtful about what that specific term is in the button can make a huge difference on conversions. And then the other piece I would encourage you to think about is just how are you different from your competition right now? If somebody goes to the Spectrum website and they go to your website and they're just able to compare speeds and prices, well, they're probably going to make a decision based on price. And as we saw earlier, Spectrum and others are getting very aggressive at, in many of these markets to even offer free internet for life. So pull up your website, pull up your competitor's website, maybe go ask some people go ask a family member, go ask somebody who's outside of the industry, ask them how they would choose. Because sometimes we're a little bit too close to it to get some real some real conversation about, the difference between your site and your competitors.
Yep, and count clicks too. How long does it take to get from the home page to that call to outcome button?
That's a great call out. And Christina, not to put you on the spot, but what would you recommend as kind of a best practice? Like if it takes more than this many clicks, you're probably not going to get people to do it.
I say two would be ideal, but I
Yeah.
think people just don't want to click. They just get frustrated. They want the easy button, right?
Which two feels like such a low number, but
Uh-huh.
I completely agree with you. It's probably two. If it takes more than
Mhm.
2 clicks to get to the thing that you're trying to get people to buy, they're probably not going to buy. They're,
Yep.
they're just very, you need to make it easy for people and get them quickly into the thing that you want them to buy. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great call out. So I mentioned that we wanted to provide you guys some AI prompts to actually do some of this analysis for you. So Christina put these together. Thank you, Christina. And we've actually included them as resources in the webinar. So I believe they're under the resources section, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
You can go and just grab these. And we within Calix, we generally use Copilot as our kind of AI tool of choice. But certainly these could be leveraged in other tools as well. I will caveat that if you're using other tools, definitely be careful about the type of information that you're putting into those, because if you're putting it into a large language model, well, then it's out there for the public. So do be cautious about that. But if you're using Copilot, if you have access to that through Microsoft Office 365, that can be a great way to leverage these prompts. And what I really like about leveraging AI for this type of analysis is it removes it removes our feelings about it.
Hmm.
We often get very precious about the things that we've created, about the terms that we're using on our website, about how we're framing this up for our customers because we created it and we're proud of it. And oftentimes that means that we're not able to look at it objectively. So what I really like about using AI for these types of analysis is that you can then again, I can get it, frankly, an objective view. I'm going to stop share and I'm going to reshare really quick. So we actually ran this prompt on one of the websites of somebody who was registered for the webinar here. And I'm going to share the output here. So this was for Gigabeam Internet. And we ran that prompt on the website. And so here you can start to see some of the results of and the outcomes of that prompt. So it went through the steps that we outlined. It's pulling all of this information together, and then it's analyzing it against specific persona messages. Actually did really well. We asked it to rank it 1 to 5, or 0 to 5, I should say. Gave it a good score here for remote workers. There was clearly some discussion around fast upload and download speeds for home workers, site highlights, no lag, virtual meetings, things like that. So kind of getting into some of the benefits, the specific benefits that a home worker would be, or a remote worker would be interested in. There are some gaps here that it identified as well. And again, this is an objective view, right? This isn't me going to the site and saying, I would like to see more information about gamers. AI is doing this based on all the best practice and knowledge that it has. So I'm not going to go through the entire output here, but I just wanted to show this as an example of the type of insight that you can get with a pretty simple, I shouldn't say simple prompt, that's a super long prompt, but a fairly simple process of taking this, let AI go off and do all of this research for you and come back and identify those opportunities where there's some opportunities and recommendations in here, really specific things that AI would recommend to make modifications to this website. So I'll jump back to the deck, but I just wanted to share that as kind of a quick example of the type of output that we're talking about with a prompt like this. And then, Christina, do you mind talking through this one as well? I know this is one that you also created around generating the calls to outcome versus calls to action.
Yep. So, call to action, switching it up. So, what's the benefit? So, this can analyze and just generate website ideas based on what we want to speak to that value and that position package. So, you can put together, the persona details or upload a picture, put the link to your website of what you are providing or offering, and then it's going to generate some ideas for that page for you to consider. So, different ways of communication. We've got some examples of benefits within the prompt of protect your family, connect all, stay secure, to kind of get you going to see what you like.
And the part I really like about this is when we talk about low friction things that can be done, we're talking about changing button text on a website. We're not talking about a whole website redesign. If you just want to test out, okay, if I currently I have a button that says learn more, if I change that to protect family, let me monitor the activity over the next month and see if it drives more conversions. If it doesn't, then let's try something different. But this is a great way to test things that again are fairly low friction. And automate some of the research and the guidance leveraging AI. Okay, Christina, I will, speaking of language, I think this is a really good slide to kind of cap off on that.
Yeah, so whenever you are crafting your value-based offers, we talked a little bit about messaging and how you can still provide or offer the same service like Experience IQ to different personas, but it's all about the wording that you use to make it really resonate with them. So here's some differences of words and how one has a larger impact over the other. So house versus home, right? House is maybe something for sale, where home is something warm, where you feel safe. Cheap, nobody wants to be associated with being cheap or buying something cheap, right? We want something affordable, that's still going to fit within our budget, right? Within our means. Boss versus leader, right? We want to lead the way. We want to have that positive association with growth. Or thinking about job versus career, right? We want to look at the end game goal and the larger outcome. So, just a few examples here to think about. What words are you using today in your messaging, and how can we switch them a little bit to make them a little bit more personal?
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I think those are some great examples of just subtle changes that make a really big
Mhm.
difference there. The house versus home one, I love that one. I love that example.
Yeah.
Um, the other the other piece we wanted to talk just a little bit here around is thinking about engagements across the entire journey. And generally in our industry, we do a pretty good job at the left-hand side of this chart, generally, where we're focusing on awareness, we're bringing in prospects, we're identifying those folks that we want to bring in, and then we acquire them. And we don't do as awesome a job on the right-hand side of this chart, where we're thinking about what are the touch points that happen across that entire journey. And if we're not thoughtful about what those touch points are across that journey, if somebody's been with us for a year or 2 years and they haven't heard from us, and we're not thinking about those touch points, then they're much more likely to churn. I was on the phone with a customer the other day and asked them very bluntly what their touch points were with their customers after they signed up for service. And their response was, we send them a bill. And that was it. There was no, nurturing across that journey, nothing. And if the bill is the only touch point that we have with our customers, that's going to result in ultimately resentment and again likely churn, because it's a not so great touch point every single month. So thinking about how do we build meaningful touch points across that entire journey. We don't need to be talking to people every day. They don't want to hear from us that frequently, but at key points in the journey, as we identify that they may be having a challenging experience with the service that they're currently purchasing, something like that, being able to be proactive there makes a huge difference. We also mentioned that we wanted to show a couple of specific examples of providers that have done a good job. And I was putting this together and I realized that there's nothing but learn more buttons here. So we need to work with good folks at SE Telecom to change these calls to outcome a little bit. But the story I really like this story because they've done a great job in transitioning from a speed-based provider to one that's a bit more focused on how their customers are actually using the services that they're buying. So they started out with a 100 meg package and a 1 gig package. And not surprisingly, most of their customers were buying the 1 gig package. What they decided to do was move to 4 different service offers. And however, the detail kind of underlying the services is still these 2 speed-based plans. The 2 plans that you see here on the left are the 1 gig plan. The 2 plans that you see here on the right are the 100 meg plan. And they've seen a dramatic shift in moving their customers off of these legacy packages to something that is more appropriate for them. And this has been a combination of new customers coming on board, signing up for these new service tiers, as well as moving their existing customers over to these new tiers. We also wanted to show just the website and kind of the flow of this. So here we've gone to choose our package, and then we see what the different package options are. When we click on one of these buttons, the learn more buttons that will need to get changed, we're getting driven to a specific landing page that talks to the value that a person signing up for the family safe and secure package is going to get. They're getting enhanced parental controls. They're able to deliver those healthy screen time habits and age restrictions for their kids. Because families need more than just an internet connection. So they're really leaning into that messaging around enforcing online rules, keeping kids safe online, being able to, they've also rolled out Smart Town, so roaming around to stay connected even when customers are not in their home. But I really like this example. And then if we go back to the main page there and go to the simple and secure plan, we can see a different set of descriptions here, bringing you closer to the people and things that you love. There's the imagery that we were talking about earlier to align a little bit more to the target market for this specific offer. Secure internet, hassle-free, total control, leaning into things, reliability, leaning into things that are going to be really important for this specific group. So we can see how different service, but also different messaging in each one of these options. They're leaning into, safe browsing, built-in cybersecurity, personalized home Wi-Fi design with a custom install. I love that call out. That's something that, for the most part, most of our customers are doing already. They're already sending people out to do a great install and make sure that the Wi-Fi is rock solid. Well, let's talk about that and make sure that you're getting the benefit of actually, the great service that you're delivering to your customers. Let me go forward. Okay, and then another example here from our good friends at Jade in Colorado, and theirs is a bit more creative, I would say, than what we saw with SC Telecom. They've really gone out there with, thinking about this family fortress, work from home warrior. Here's some good examples of conquer your workday, dominate your game with the gamer's gambit. So not only leaning into the benefits that somebody's going to get out of these solutions, never lose because of your connection again, but also then being really thoughtful with the calls to action that they're delivering here as well. And they've seen massive subscriber growth and, frankly, a very competitive market and huge ARPU increases as well. You can see that these are not cheap services that are laid out here. These are not inexpensive, but they've been able to drive really significant ARPU increases, again, for both new and existing customers by getting them into something that makes a lot more sense. I'll play this video quickly as well. You can kind of get a view into what their website looks like. I would definitely recommend going out and playing with this a bit as well. They have a little quiz that you can go through too, to take our quiz to find out. But here you're starting to just see, protect. When I click on protect my family, here's the additional things that I'm going to get out of this, and then the call to action buttons there. And as you're going through each one of these different services, you can see kind of the different offers and different options that are available. Okay, let me skip forward on that. And then the last one I wanted to mention was a company called Magnify Broadband. And theirs is a really interesting story because they were a rural provider. They bought another provider in a different state, and that provider was really struggling. And they decided that they were going to launch value-based offers at that acquired company because they kind of went, you know what, this can't get any worse. So let's just try something different and see how it goes. Well, it's gone really well, to the point where not only are they seeing great success in the acquired area, but they've actually rolled out value-based offers now to their main company as well. And they've seen a massive decrease in customers coming in at those baseline service tiers, at that essential service tier. And just by changing some of the packaging and the solutions that are being included in these higher end tiers, as well as talking about them in a slightly different way, been able to drive up our ARPU really significantly. So I love this story because again, they kind of were able to do that A/B test, and that test went so well that they just decided to roll it across their entire business. Christine, I know you've worked with a couple of these customers. Anything you'd add to that I missed?
I love the fact that so many of these have specific dedicated pages for each plan as well, because this is huge in all of your campaign efforts. Um, Joe, our director at our market activation team, is notorious for saying, does the party match the invite, right? So if you're serving up an ad to a family, is the messaging aligning all across the board until they sign up or request service?
Such a great point about the landing page piece of it. And I think SC Telecom has done a good job of that, of having a specific landing page for each one of those offers. And then as they're running ads to eliminate the number of clicks that Christina was talking about, I don't want to send them back to the primary homepage. If I'm targeting a family-based, message with and a family-based group of people, well, I'm just going to drive them directly to that family page so they don't have to click on my main page, go find the packages. Well, now I'm 3 clicks in and I probably don't care. I want to drive them specifically to that landing page that talks about the benefits. So that's a great call out, Christina. It's not only going to help you from a digital marketing perspective, but also eliminating the number of clicks that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And Christina, I'll let you talk about this one around the value of loyalty.
Yeah, so we've talked about experience and the benefit for the subscriber and the goals for the business, but what does it look like long term? So if you think about, we all want more customers, right? More subscribers. The cost to get one is expensive, right? So what can we do to reduce churn? Because it is much more cost effective to work on making sure our current subscribers are happy, in addition to acquisition, right? But how can we keep them and make it sticky in a relationship with us, right? It's too good to leave because, oh, they protect my kids and keep us safe online, right? So what's that value proposition that we can also upsell by adding more differentiation, to help reduce acquisition versus cost being 6 to 7 times more expensive? Diving into the retention, right? So increasing retention by 2% is huge. The outcome on that revenue wise is decreasing cost by 10%, which is not anything small, to not notice. And looking at the probability of scale to an existing subscriber, right? So that's around 60 to 70%. So they're going to see what's in market and they're going to want it too, right? They're going to not want to have that FOMO, that fear of missing out. And so when it comes down to loyalty, the average worth compared to the very first purchase is around 10 times that initial price. So there is a long-term aspect to this, right? We're thinking of the long-term end game, right? How long can we keep subscribers? How can we reduce costs while making sure that we are still, having a profit that's growing?
Well, that probability of sale to an existing customer is something that I think gets slept on a lot in our industry as
Mhm.
well, where you've got this big base of customers that you can, whether it's launching a new service or launching just a different way that you're talking about your services, it's a great opportunity to go back to that existing base of customers that you have a relationship with and that are
Mhm.
much more likely to be willing to sign up for service. I mean, Christina, what's the probability of a sale to a non, I mean, like, what's a good take rate for a marketing campaign? Probably 1 or 2%, right? Like
Uh-huh.
that would be a good campaign for
Yep.
non-subs. So if I can go target my existing customers and get a likely 60 to 70% take rate versus a 1 to 2% take rate on prospects,
Mhm.
I know where I'm going to spend my dollars, right? And
Yep.
yes, we need to sprinkle a little bit around all over the place to make sure we're acquiring customers too. But there's a tremendous amount of revenue that's, in those existing customers also. And then as we were, kind of look to wrap up here, just a couple of additional things. So, we've talked about a lot of different ways to go to market with these solutions. What we're showing on this slide is how our customers are doing that, and that is with the Calix Smart Life, Smart Home, and Smart Life solutions. So at the bottom, we've got that, foundational aspect of the GigaSpire that's sitting in the customer's home. And those solutions allow us to offer all of the additional services that we've talked about today: Experience IQ, Protect IQ, ScamWatch IQ, Home Office IQ. I'm not going to read through all of them. But point being, we have the ability to add on these additional layers of service and differentiate against the competition by rolling the smart home and smart life solutions out to your customers. And from from an ease of rollout perspective, with the GigaSpire sitting in the customer's home, that becomes the gateway to be able to sell all these additional services, as well as deliver that great experience through the Command IQ app or the personalized version of the app. Be able to have your customers have a level of control within their home that they are asking for. So just to kind of wrap this up, wanted to really think about next steps and actions. We did mention that we have the resources for those AI prompts in the resources section of the webinar. So if you want to go off and sort of run those, by all means, please do. But thinking about just kind of 5 key next steps here. So really go back and deeply analyze how you're speaking to customers about the services that you're selling. And, again, maybe take a little bit of a step back, go find some other folks that are not as close to it as you are, friends, family, those sorts of things, and see what they think about how you're speaking about the products that you're selling. Are you only selling speed and price? Are you only seeing speed and price as the primary decision criteria? And review what your website actually says, whether that's through AI or you doing it on your own, but really look deeply about the terms and the terminology that you're using on your website. Is it nothing but technical jargon, or is it really speaking to how somebody's actually going to use the internet? And then going back to that kind of long-term customer journey, what are the key touch points across that journey? Is it an anniversary date, a year after somebody signed up for service? Is it an opportunity to proactively identify maybe that they're not having a great experience using a data-driven approach from Calix Service Cloud or Calix Engagement Cloud? But point being, think about what those touch points are across that entire journey, and then audit that journey. What's the difference that you're delivering to your customers that they're not going to get from a competitor? I think we have one more poll. We'll launch that. And I will say, if you've liked anything that we've talked about today, please feel free to check out the Buffering podcast. You can hear the latest episode with Christina on there talking about Wicked and how that aligns to the broadband service provider space, which was a fun tie-in. But Zach and I have a really good time with this program, and we've brought a bunch of industry folks on there as well. I think there's been some great conversations coming out of Connections around how people are pushing in the broadband service provider space. So if you want to hear more conversations about what others are doing and seeing success in the industry, would definitely recommend checking it out. Or if you just like the sound of my voice, that's fine too. Okay, we'll leave that poll up there, and then I will hand it back over to Susan Higgins to kind of wrap us up.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I didn't see any questions that we needed to finalize answers for. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Gabe and Christina, for some very tactical exercises that the audience can implement. And we would love for you guys to join us on December 3rd for part 2 of this discussion called How to Increase Lasting Loyalty by Offering What Your Competitors Won't. The registration link can be found also in the resource section of this webinar console, or you can always go to calix.com, click on resources in the top, and then navigate to webinars, and you'll see all the webinars that we have available for you to register for. We'd love to see you in December. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us and hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.